Okay, here we go. All right. First, I want to thank the generosity of these men who are very important and very tight schedules. Also, want to acknowledge the value of their time here, and also their patience in waiting for us to get started here today. Can you please give them a round of applause? They're not being paid to be here with you. All right, my name is Kimon Freeman. I'm an angry black man in therapy. I'm the co-founder of WEAC Radio here in the studio that you are now sitting in. I basically have built this with our own hands, so I thank you for your time and your patience as well, because your time is just as invaluable for you being here with us today and waiting for us to get started. Having said that, our whole premise behind building our own radio station is based upon one African proverb that simply says, until the lions have their historians, the tales of the hunt will continue to glorify the hunter. I submit to you that you have been sold, bought, and purchased on the hunter's story. You don't know your story. And that's why you don't care too much about your education, because your education thus far doesn't reflect you, doesn't relate to you, and it definitely doesn't empower you. But I submit to you that you need to begin to educate yourselves. You need to begin to educate yourselves. Because if the information age and you do not know something, whose fault is that? You all have a computer in your hand. You call it a cell phone, invented by a black man in 1972, I'd like to remind you. But it's not only just a phone, it's not only just a computer, a GPS, a tracking device by a government agency, as some would say, a flashlight, a calculator, a map quest. It's a powerful tool that can document police encounters, might save your ass one day. You need to become producers of media and content rather than consumers of media and content. You are the generation that is threatening to be the first generation where we as a people do not move forward. That is not by accident. That is by design. That is by design. The fact that we have, how many of y'all know somebody's been shot? How many of y'all know somebody in jail? How many of y'all know somebody that's been murdered? Do you think that's normal? The fact that you accept that is the problem. That's not normal. Those are our conditions that we was placed in, and we must begin to break this cycle of violence and ignorance. Otherwise, when you have children, they're gonna go through the same thing that you've gone through and see the same things that you've seen. Do you want that to happen? Who want to change the world and make so it'd be better for their kids? So the rest of y'all don't care? If you have a kid, you don't care. Then it's up to you to do something. You cannot change the world until you change yourself. You can't change the world until you change yourself. So with that said, I hope you'll take a moment of your time and your lives to give these gentlemen who volunteered to be here to share their story to hopefully inspire you to do something. Can we get a round of applause for that? All conscious-minded people say, do something. Do something. Do something. Do something. Thank you. Introducing Darryl Brooks and Vernard R.
When I was asked to come and that Daryl would be here, I assumed that we would have a conversation amongst us about our stuff and that you would witness it and then you would ask questions. We may do that. I don't have any particular thing that I want to start off by talking about. I mean, I do have one favorite pet peeve, and that has to do with how want to know how much you know about navigating your way around D.C. In other words, if I were to tell you to go to the 4200 block of Connecticut Avenue, would you know where that is and how to get there? That's my pet thing, because I think if you learn how to move your way around in this city and how to manage transporting yourself from one space to another in the city, then you will begin to look at gaining access to the resources that it has. This is the information capital of the world. They say New York is, but this is really the information capital of the world. And you're right in the middle of it. and you've got easy access to access this information and figure out how you can apply it to your own lives. And so we may get into a discussion about that as we move forward. But I'm going to let Daryl talk as well, and then we'll see where we go with that.
Hi. Young lady Davies made a statement up here when she came up front, and she talked about how we had to access or find our own way or get information. When I was coming up, I was a street kid, not the regular street kid, but I was in my own head, my own little street kid. And I was always anti-everything because I had opportunity as a young man to have my parents owned a business. They owned a laundromat on Minnesota Avenue. So I always had little things, little hustles to keep money in my pocket, and also I stayed focused on what I was doing. So when everybody else would get in line, I knew a better way to get what I needed without getting in line. So I was kind of bratty mentally, but I didn't understand what that bratty was. What I realized is that a lot of things that people guide you to do ain't necessarily who you are and what you want to do. That's when I met this guy when I was coming up. Didn't know him from Adam, but he had a program. And the program that he had would give people opportunities to study things in the arts. I just got turned on to the arts because I really didn't know what the arts was really about. Because when I went to school, they weren't really focusing on the arts. Didn't have no idea what that was about or how that would connect to my everyday life. Vernard gave me a video camera, a recorder, and wires and all kinds of stuff and said, here, go out and make a movie. Go out and just explore what you can do with this and bring it back when you finish. I'm saying, this got to be kidding. The guy gave me all this equipment. I came home, I started taking pictures of everything, but it made me open my mind because, number one, he trusted me. Number two, I had a chance to just play with a camera. Had no idea of it. After I've had it that weekend, I felt comfortable around that kind of equipment. I took the equipment back to him, unscathed. It was all intact. But the thing I realized is that when I even went to school, no one gave me stuff or trusted me to try to explore different kinds of things. And I think that's what the young lady, Miss Davies, was trying to say. There's so many things that we can do if we just get out of the basic routine of what we've been doing. What he inspired me to do was then also explore even more things in the arts. So what I did, I opened up an advertising agency because I used to like to take pictures. Didn't know anything about advertising. Had no idea. It was hard for me to even try to spell advertising. But what I did, I went out with my cameras and walked into a store, a retail store up on 14th Street and Columbia Road to be exact, and walked in the store and told this guy, I want to do your advertising. I'm going to take pictures of your merchandise in here. I'm going to put a flyer together, and I'll help promote your store. And the guy looked at me and said, okay. And I jumped on his counter that day with my cameras and started taking pictures all of his store. Can I tell you something? I had never developed film because I used to go to drugstore and get film developed. I'm telling you, I was that raw, but I was game enough that if someone believed in me, I would deliver my word and come back to what I said I was going to do. To make a long story short, that changed my life because number one, I opened up my own business. I was able to find out the things I needed to do to come back with the things I promised I would deliver. I ended up meeting printers. I ended up meeting graphic artists, graphic designers. I ended up meeting a lot of different people in doing what I had to do. I found two private businesses that develop pictures, custom pictures, instead of going to the drugstore and dropping the roll off. That's what they used to do then. But those are the things I witnessed and learned how to do out of coming out of the box, exploring what I wanted to do in my own head and trying to deliver it. That story can go further because I ended up getting involved with a nonprofit arts group in Northwest Washington called Compared to What Incorporated. That arts group used to do workshops like this. We did a lot of stuff here in Anacostia Park back in the 70s, from 72 to 75. We did workshops in the wintertime, and we also have a brick program in the spring called the Human Kindness Day. But we also did workshops in different housing areas around the city. We had teachers, we had artisans from leather, drawing, poetry, gave workshops. And some of the workshops we had, one workshop in particular was called Caligiva, which was basically teaching reading through doing plays and giving examples and giving people opportunity to write their own story and then present their story in a play. But all that came out of one thing, because someone trusted me and also gave me an opportunity to explore and give me confidence in my own self.
Now, how did I get to the place where I was able to loan Daryl that equipment? I started life at Freedman's Hospital. Does anybody know where Freedman's Hospital is or was?
It's WHR now.
It's Howard University campus. In 1941, July the 7th, I just had a birthday. I'm 74 years old. Thank you. I really should say I'm 74 years of age. I'm not old. I grew up in Southwest, right across the bridge. You know where the stadium is over there? 2 blocks from there in the 1400 block of Half Street is where I grew up initially. Marvin Gaye grew up about 5 blocks away from me. We grew up went to the same school, et cetera. So I had that experience, sang with him in the glee club at Randall Junior High School, et cetera. I've been working basically in my own business, so to speak, since I was 8 years old. First with a paper route, the Daily News at the time, and then I moved on to where I had a business in front of my house. I ran up my parents' water bill, washing cars, or we moved from Southwest over by Greenway down Minnesota Avenue there, and there wasn't a house in that neighborhood whose windows I didn't wash or lawns I didn't cut, et cetera. So I worked within my neighborhood. I didn't have to leave. Any of you all could do the same thing, of course, in your own neighborhoods, especially if you have seniors living in the neighborhoods who don't have the energy to get out and cut their grass, for instance, or go do errands and things like that. So I was able to make a way that way. In the 60s, I became, out of interest for photography, I became a photographer. That led to video in the early 70s when portable video first started. We had cameras that were way larger than the ones that you're looking at portable videos. Now I own a GoPro camera, which I didn't bring with me, and it's no bigger than my fist, and it shoots a significantly better, image than we had back then. But at any rate, I did workshops teaching young people, especially photography in the Shaw neighborhood, and I moved on from that experience to having an art gallery downtown for 25 years. It was called the Maya Gallery. It was opened in 1976 when my youngest daughter Maya was born, and I named it after her, and it closed in 2001 after 25 years, and I had 3 or 4 different locations, one of which was the Landsbergs building. Do people know about the Landsbergs building downtown? Who knows the Landsbergs building? Yes, near the archives. It's an apartment building now, but at one point back when we were growing up, it was a department store, and it was vacant for a good period of time. And I had the opportunity to run an art center in there with 31 different groups, compared to what was one of those groups in that building, as an example. So that happened in the early 80s. But at any rate, that was one of the facilities that my gallery was located in. And I finished with the gallery like I said, in 2001. And I did some work with the annual Black Family Reunion, teaching technology there. We would set up computer labs on the National Mall outdoors, and we would turn people on to technology. And that happened for 5 years during that same period of time, right around 2000. And then since 2008, I've been presenting jazz, both in Baltimore and Washington. And in Washington, it's called East River Jazz, and in Baltimore, it's called BMO Jazz. So that's basically my experience. I've jumped all over the place based on interests I had. I've done what I've done. Every one of you in this room can do the same thing in terms of following what you're interested in, especially these days, because as I was telling a young lady, turn on your phone and look at Google and find what you're interested in, and you can kind of move forward from there. I'd really like to hear, suppose you're listening to my story or Daryl's story, you'll hear our stories as a result of our response. But I'd like to hear what you got to say. I'm interested in what's on your mind, and then we can kind of have a conversation back and forth.
Our young people have prepared some questions. We can exhaust those before we go to the audience.
Okay.
As a spokesperson for young people, come up here and speak into the mic. Okay, one at a time.
Well, hi, my name is Selena, and I'm an intern for WEAC Radio. No, I'm good. I'll stand. First, I just want to say thanks for you guys bringing music to the community. Can y'all hear me?
Use the mic. Put it in your mouth.
Okay. I want to just give thanks to you two for bringing music to our community and widening our, genre other than just hip hop and rap, whatever. So I just have a question for you both. How much did music actually influence you two growing up?
I'm gonna actually, in terms of presenting music, Daryl hasn't spoken to it, but he's done a significantly lot more presenting music than I ever have, and I've done a ton of music these last 8 years. But this brother has been presenting music since when? What year? 1972. That's a long time. And let him talk about presenting music.
Where I left off was I ended up getting involved with I had my own company. But as I told you, I had no formal training in my own company. So when I opened up my advertising agency, yes, I did some good things, but also did some whack things. I made some mistakes, some major mistakes. I got cocky, not knowing what I didn't know. And then once you get to that dead end and you really know that, oops, I made a big mistake, you can turn around or you can fight it or you can just say, you know what, it's time to find something new to do. So I took that route. I found something new to do. The things I learned from the mistakes, I got involved with a nonprofit organization. The nonprofit organization was called Compared to What Incorporated. In the interim of that, I loved the music. So I used to collect music. I used to go to shows. But the nonprofit arts organization, we had concerts after like 4 o'clock or 5 o'clock in the afternoon right here in Anacostia, out in Anacostia Park. In 72, we gave concerts 5 nights a week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. They were free to the community. At the same time, we had to coordinate some of these acts, getting their equipment out of their mama's basement or their cousin's house, or some of them didn't have trucks or transportation. We had to coordinate people bringing their equipment down. The Park Service gave us equipment, but at the same time, we were training folks in sound reinforcement. We were training folks in staging. We were training folks in light. We were training folks in PR and security, because when you present a show, there has to be some kind of organization. What happened after that in 73, we did it again, but I remember I told you we did a big festival on the Monument Grounds every April. So we ended up getting national artists to come in town to be presented and celebrate the arts. And what we tried to do, because now we were getting a little bit more consciousness and had a purpose in what we were doing, we were trying to get people involved with our programs that had a consciousness and a purpose. So the first year we did the show down on Miami Grounds with a young lady named Roberta Flack. The second year we did it with a guy named Dick Gregory. a conscious person. And we celebrated him as an artist, him as a humanitarian, him as a social activist. The next year, we gave a concert down the Monument Grounds. This time, we honored Nina Simone and Muhammad Ali. We dealt with consciousness, black consciousness, as well as we did an art and essay contest, excuse me, throughout the school system so people could write about that kind of consciousness. What was their awareness of these folks? What knowing these folks were about and how they related to your lives, as well as we were still doing workshops in Anacostia during the day and having concerts at night. That program grew similar to what you guys are doing here. A program like that grew to such an extent that we ended up having something like 300-some thousand people over the course of a summer come to our parks. On the Monument Grounds, we ended up having maybe 200, 300, 400,000 people. In 1975, in my estimation, we had probably close to 300,000. This guy right here, after that, took a picture from the top of the monument, if I'm not mistaken, and gave me a picture from that. I should have brought it. From the top of the monument of one of our programs. Now, just to tell you the politics of Washington, D.C., the federal government cut arts funding in 1975, because they were saving their money for the bicentennial in 1976. So all arts programs that were being supported by different organizations in the city, their funding got cut. Money dried up supposedly. That changed the opportunity for people of consciousness to spread and be able to foster these kinds of programs. So what we did, we said, okay, we have a nonprofit organization that's doing this. Let's take the students, let's take the crew that we got working with us, take our relationships, let's take our understanding and make a profit-making company. We got the basic mechanics, but instead of waiting for the government and private industry or private companies to give us grants and funding, let's make our own money. That was dangerous, because there's nothing more dangerous than folks of consciousness deciding they want to make their own money and really pay attention. We started with our first paid concert under our profit-making company. We played at the Capitol Center. I'm going to tell you these groups. Some of them you might know, you might not know. We had a group called Slave, T-Connection, and Average White Band. What did that mean then? Well, let me tell you the hookup. We had a very strong relationship with a radio station at that time. It was an AM radio station called WOL. We had an arts program that came on. It was called Compared to What's Arts Forum. We came on after Petey Green. Y'all might not know who that is, but y'all need to write these names down and Google them later. Our show at the Capitol Center that year sold out and sold 22,000 tickets. It was the most talked about show in the music industry on that level because, number one, there were a bunch of acts that had really no idea or had no reason to be able to sell that many tickets. But the hook was we had a community relationship. We had a radio relationship. And we knew that on the street, everybody loved AWB. We knew on the street, everybody loved Slave and T-Connection. They had the hottest street records at the time. Tickets were only like $7, $8 back then. So nobody would have ever booked that particular show anyplace else. But here, because we had the pulse of the people who were our constituents, it made a difference and it worked. Now, I don't know if you got the message in that. Because if you have your constituents, if you have your people, if you have a connection with your community, and if you're down with them and they're down with you, they'll go wherever you are because you're going to deliver to them what they're looking for. With that attitude and that understanding, my company has been doing concerts across country and really in some other countries as well. Just to give you a snapshot, George Clinton, Parliament Funkadelic, we landed the mothership. I'm the guy who threw away the mothership. It was in the newspaper. This mothership that's in the Smithsonian, that'll be up in another 2 years. I landed that one in Central Park in New York City, New York Summer Stage. I'm the one my company did the Run DMC Raising Hell tour, the biggest rap tour ever. We're the ones that did Go-Go Meets Rap. Have y'all ever heard of Go-Go Live at the Capitol Center? We're the ones that produced that. We had done because of our understanding and relationships, just shows when they were killing black boys down in Atlanta. The city of Atlanta said, we need somebody to come in here and promote a show for the black community because these kids down here are terrified. We produced a show for the city down in Atlanta to make for the black kids that feel comfortable. We get up a kid show down there. We've done those type of programs. Brother that was over here a little while ago, I was telling him he should be a cop. Let me tell you about that. We did concerts at Lawton. We did concerts at Rikers. We produced concerts where our people were. You follow what I'm saying? Because they had Father's Day. They had special celebrations in jails. Who's going to entertain our people if we don't entertain our people? Who's going to be that person to bring something positive to our community if we don't nurture it and do it ourselves? So it's with that mentality that ended up giving us an opportunity not to produce concerts, but to serve our community. And we've been producing black shows. We have a show now that's coming to town, you might have heard about it, called a Summer Spirit Festival. We've been doing that festival going on 10 years. It's a basic brainchild of the same thing we did in 1972, which is called Human Kindness Day. It has a marketplace. It has positive music, up-tempo music, and it's by people of consciousness and people who want to present good artistry. So we've basically continued the same element that we did in 72 all the way to 2015. We have not changed. Our mentality is the same. It was to serve our community. That's how, and I've done concerts for days. Stevie Wonder, I don't know what you like, but if they've been in the last 40 years, I might have touched upon them once or twice.
For you both. And being that you two are, producing concerts, is there any hardships in that just by being African American? Is it hard to produce that?
Well, since March of 2008, I've been presenting live jazz performances, and jazz musicians are the last to be hired, typically, in this market. I mean, that's just a fact. And so it's very difficult to sell that. And so my audiences are typically smaller. We had an event in this very space of a Latin group back in July during Jazz Fest time, and we filled the place up to, I think it was about 80, 85 people jammed up into here to listen to that performance. That was the largest audience in that series, 85 people, mind you. It was the largest audience that we had in that series. So my shows, my presentations are typically smaller audiences compared to Daryl's. Daryl, again, is the numbers he's given you. How many people were at the Stevie Wonder when we did?
75?
Yeah.
It was over 300,000. The government said we did 200, but they would shorten that period because it's a politics of numbers.
Right.
I'll tell you about that later.
Right. And that was at the Sylvan Theater. You know where the Sylvan Theater is? Anybody know where that is?
The Monument Grounds.
It's a Monument Grounds. It's a theater in the Monument Grounds, and that's where that performance took place. And there was some ugly stuff that happened. Really set up where some folks supposedly started. Some young blacks supposedly started attacking some young whites. Tourists. And it just started a whole riot thing that ended that. And again, here was a successful gathering of folks that look like you and me in significant numbers, and yet we couldn't go forward with it because of something like that happening.
I'm going to go even deeper than that. Where you at, sister? I'm answering your question. Come back. I want to leave you. Don't leave me now. I'm start patting my foot and start hitting it. The politics of money. The politics of money. She asked a question, what is some of the perils? I think that I'm using my own terms, the perils. If I had booked a show with Vernard, what's your name? Nico. Nico, excuse me. Open your mouth. Nico. If I was booking Nico, and Nico was a fantastic trombone player or drummer. Nico wanted to break I bring him to the neighborhood, turn him on to people. He gets a following. People like him now. Instead of doing 80 people, now he's doing 800 people. After he gets 800 people, we do a special presentation in the community. We do a fundraiser. And now, because everybody knows who he is, instead of him doing 800 people, now he's doing 1,800 people. Guess what? He's raising money. He's generating revenue. He went from, give me $20 so I can get the gas money, to I need $2,000, I need $15,000 to perform for you now, because I can demand that kind of revenue for my performance, because I got that many people coming to your venue. Here comes white folks. White folks say, okay, this guy can generate $150,000 in his presence. We're gonna give him some money in advance, so he'll only play for us for the next 3 years. Here, Nico, here's $500,000 in advance. Nico takes that money. See that smile he got? They do it every time. They do it every time. The brother who brought him in the first time, hey, Nico, come on, do the show with me. Yeah, man, I got this money now. I got obligations to these folks over here now. But Nico, I'm your man. I'm the one that got the equipment out your basement. Hey, brother, but these guys want me to play with them, and I already got this money. Guess what? Can I use the word ass? Yeah. I'm ass out. He's gone, and the seed or what I have built is now not accessible to me anymore. You understand what I'm saying? Now, let me show you the economics of that. I can't, since I don't have and have not grown with him, he hasn't grown with me, that means that the revenue that he has generated does not go back into my pocket or into my community's pocket, because I'm only dealing with people in my community. That means I don't have a building, because now that there's revenue, that money's going out of my community. It's leaving me. He took money from somebody else, and their money goes to wherever it goes. He's paid, but everything that he generated after that, nobody participates in that. Now, let me go further. If he gets real big, now that he's launched, and he's able to do 20,000 people, they're only going to put him in their buildings. Because I don't have a club that holds 20,000. I don't have I don't have a amphitheater that holds 22,000 people. My joint started out only holding 100 people. I can't build my community. I can't build structures because I don't have the revenue, because my artists are now playing for someone else. So I can give you a list of folks who have got their start in our community, but they don't work for black promoters anymore. You get it? So we lose the economics of that. And if we lose the economics, guess what? We always got our hand out instead of being able to give somebody a hand. You get that picture? And that's the problem I have. I'll give you another example. Stevie Wonder, when the folks gave him a bunch of money, he said, I got to have Carol and Daryl in my show when I play DC, because they've always been there for me. White dude called me from California. Hey, Daryl, Stevie's coming to DC. You got a piece of the date. I'm saying, wow. He remembered. Now I can tell you a bunch of folks who didn't give up. Okay, period. They never even give me a comp ticket, much less give me some money. But I'm just telling you how it is out there. Now, I mean, I can't do no better than that.
Hello, my name is Monique Brown, and I'm an intern at React Radio Station. And my first question goes to you, Mr. Brooks. How has your involvement with the civil rights movement influenced you to create the Summer Spirit Festival?
You asked for that. Let me give you a history lesson first. The program that I told you about that we did on the Monument Grounds, we made a phone call to Coretta Scott King in 1973 and said, hey, the Smithsonian is going to let us do a program there. Can you send us some pictures from the civil rights movement that we can do? So we're going to do the first display of the civil rights movement in the Smithsonian. And we got stuff sent up to us from Atlanta. We also did things at the African Museum. It used to be up the street, African Neighborhood Museum, Anacostia Neighborhood Museum up the street. We did an exhibit in there as well. We got our arts community. We did a program at the Kennedy Center. It was the first time the Kennedy Center had let black folks rent the upstairs at their atrium to do a program. When I did Dick Gregory in 1973, Dick Gregory was talking about fasting, talking about foods, talking about a level of consciousness and the difference from the propaganda, what you hear, versus the reality of what's really going on around us. So obviously it made me always look behind the curtain. I see what they said in the Washington Post, but I want to see what the Washington Foreman said about that. I want to find cats who were in the neighborhood like Vernard who knew what was going on from another direction. I always wanted to find out that other story that generally you're not going to get told. You know, like I'll listen to a WPFW versus I'll listen to Channel 4 for my news. You follow what I'm saying? So it was very, very important. And when you got involved with Muhammad Ali had just, finished being stripped of his boxing titles because he refused to be drafted. So we were dealing with Betty Shabazz came in here with Nina Simone. So we had the opportunity to see these people face to face, hear them one-on-one on what was going on in the movement. And we say the movement, I'm talking about the Black conscious movement and just the Black movement period, because there have been a lot of trailblazers in our community who have basically tried to tell the sleeping body what's going on around them, because a lot of people don't pay attention. They don't know. They have no desire. The light hasn't come on. Spike Lee did a movie called, what was it, School Days or whatever that movie was. And the end of the movie, the guy says, wake up, wake up. Yeah, do the right thing. It was School Day. He says, wake up. Because, Lawrence Fishburne, he says, wake up. And
He did right. He did say to do the right thing as well.
Yeah, it is.
But the end of the movie is School Day.
He says, wake up. And a lot of times you try to say that to your friends, like what I told you about the music business and the art business. There are artists. Vernard has been a champion of jazz. But those jazz musicians were the core next to gospel of every genre of music that Black folks deal with now, even to symphonies. It's been that creative element. It started with the drum. You follow me? Where it started from, and if we don't know how to deal with it or embrace it, or that it was even something that came out of our culture, we're sleeping giants.
My next question goes to you, Mr. Gray. Did you start the DC Jazz Festival to build up the community in DC? And also, did you use your anthropology degree to help you with the DC Jazz Festival?
Well, I started something called East River Jazz Fest, which is a partner. They call it Jazz in the Hoods, partner of the DC Jazz Festival. I didn't start the DC Jazz Festival. Thank you for thinking that. The second question had to do with my anthropology degree. It's a self-studied anthropology degree. I don't have a degree. I have knowledge up here, anthropology knowledge as well as engineering knowledge as well as technology knowledge, etc. I'm fairly much self-taught, and it has allowed me to venture into all these different communities of interest. I call it intellectual curiosity. I'm intellectually curious, and you can tell me something that I may not know anything about. I'm gonna go find out about it. I may pull my iPad out right away and research it to say, well, let me see what they said, etc. That's what's gotten me along the way. I typically have been in front on a lot of different trends in this city. In the 60s, I was walking around with an analog camera as opposed to a digital camera, Nikon, shooting photographs, and there were very few Black folks using that level of equipment. In 1970, when portable video first came out, I was one of the first persons. Typically, I was the only Black in the crowd. It was a bunch of white people using portable video and showing people how to use it. As Daryl mentioned earlier, I started one of it wasn't the very first gallery in Washington, Smith Mason Gallery, run by some elders on Rhode Island Avenue in the 1200 block. Actually, was the very first black gallery in the city, but I was early in terms of an art gallery, for instance, for a number of years. So I've always kind of been in front on things. I think this jazz programming that I'm doing now, perhaps, is on the front of things as well. So I guess you could call me a pioneer in that regard. So my anthropology degree has taught me to be a pioneer.
How you doing, Mr. Brooks and Mr. Gray? My name is Tashawn Wall. I represent WEAC Radio. And my first question is, where did you go in your youth and the things you did, and did they influence and affect the projects that you both were involved with and created? That concludes my first question.
I lived at half an O Street Southwest. If you notice, that's a destination on a bus, one of the bus lines. So the termination of the bus line was right next to the apartment I grew up in. I would get my initial exploration outside of my neighborhood by myself, probably was about 8 or 9 years old. I would go downtown to pay bills for my mother at Cahn's department store, which was right at 7th and Pennsylvania Avenue, or the Landsberg's department store, which was up the street. I very rarely dealt with Heck Company at those days. So that was my first exploration. And I could get a free ride on the bus because we would give, this was pre-air conditioning days, we would give the bus drivers large mason jars full of water with ice in it as a way of keeping them cool. And hence we got free transportation going uptown. And then from there I explored U Street, where different theaters presented programs. And in those days, the theaters were segregated, and so you couldn't go to the theaters downtown. I could go to the theaters up on U Street. So it was the Booker T, it was the Lincoln, it was the Republic, and it was one more. You
got 3 uptown.
Okay, yeah, those 3 especially.
You had the Langston over here.
The Langston was out on Benning Road. Strand was further out in Northeast, et cetera. So there were theaters that were black theaters that I was able to explore just, in that regard. So that's what I did in terms of getting around and finding my way.
I was a little more dusty, but I was dusty in another kind of sense. I told you my folks owned a laundromat, so at night I had to clean the laundromats up. So I was going to Spingarn. I would go to school, basically get a good night's sleep, play football, and then after that, I was done because all I had to do then was go to work. My mother said, you know what, I'm not having that. So in my 11th grade year, I was probably going to stay back. She said, we're going downtown, we're going to send you away to school. Why are you going to do that? Because the way you're going now, you're not going nowhere. So they ended up sending me to private school in Massachusetts. Culture shock. Culture shock. Culture shock. I was in Great Barrington, which is a tri-state Berkshire area. So I played sports. I got letters, but I also had to go to class. My class had like 7 kids in the room. You couldn't do nothing but pay attention, because somebody would, be on you or, crack you. I started really realizing all the things I didn't know, because you had to sit there. I was sitting there with kids from Massachusetts, New Hampshire, upstate New York, Connecticut. They were all bratty kids too from their neighborhoods, but their parents were basically trying to send them to a college preparatory school so they would at least pay attention and do better. About halfway through the year, they had us send out requests to go to colleges, to get admission to colleges. I think I sent out maybe about 20 requests. I got accepted to like 3. But I still, in my head, I wasn't planning on going to college. The only thing I wanted to do was open up my own company, open up my own business. Because I had opportunity when I was in junior high school that this little Jewish kid that I used to go to school with at Taft, his father had 2 stores on 8th Street, and they were clothing stores. So during the holidays, I could sell clothes. I used to be a salesman and sell clothes. And I started a retail business again, if you understand what I'm saying. So I knew the difference between buying wholesale, buying retail. I knew the difference in doing business versus being a business, if you got that message. So after I graduated from that preparatory school, that summer school, I needed to take 2 more courses till I had my diploma because that's how bad my grades were. That year, I went to Scotland, Ireland, Wales, Germany, England, and Switzerland. As well, I went to summer school in Wales for 6 weeks to take my course. Culture awakening. I met people who did not hate me. They were from Denmark, who from London. I was there when the Beatles came out. I came home with a Beatles record telling everybody, y'all need to hear these white boys. They sound just like Motown. You know, they was doing Mickey's Monkey in London. We were like, me and this other dude that was from D.C., when we went there, we were like, people looked at us like, who are you guys? Who are you black guys? Because we were funny, we danced, we had fun. But these folks took us into their home. We went everywhere. But when I came back home, guess what? Some March on Washington. I got off the bus, went to my home with my folks after I came back from Europe. I knew about the March on Washington because my consciousness had risen. I hitchhiked from East Capitol Street down to the march. I heard Martin Luther King's speech. So then when I went to college, I ended up going to Central State University in Ohio. When I went to college, what was everybody who knew anybody, once you got to college, do you live in D.C.? You from D.C.? Did you go to the march? I told that story 1,000 times because there were kids that were coming through the ranks, high school, wherever they came from, Alabama, Ohio, Detroit, that also wanted to be down with what was going on in the civil rights movement, what was going on, and what was happening in their community in comparison what was happening in your community. So it influenced me a great deal because the arts played in the back of my head lightly then because people were doing drawings, people were doing poetry. I got introduced to the last poets. I got introduced to Mira Barack. I got introduced to those guys. I got introduced to guys who were giving you a positive message or at least describing what was going on in their community, even before, before, not even in our community, but giving you a history lesson through their music. So you knew what Nina Simone was talking about. You knew what Dick Gregory was jokes about. You understood the difference of the information. There was a message in their music.
I just want to ask one question of everybody here. I also went to the 1963 March on Washington and heard Dr. King speak. How many of you in here know someone that actually went to that march? Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Ask that same question about the Million Man March.
I also attended the Million Man March. How many of you know someone that went to the Million Man March? Okay. How many never heard of the Million Man March? Raise your hand. It's okay. It's not embarrassing. How many of you never heard of the 1963 March on Washington? Everybody knows about that, right? Why do you know about that? What's the most significant thing about it? Huh? There you go. There you go. Thank you.
My second question is just for Mr. Gray. How did people feel about your workshops and seminars on jazz and black culture? Did they affect people's lives positively or help?
Or what?
Or help them.
And help them? I have to think that I've done, in 8 years, I've presented nearly 200 concerts and conversations, and they've taken place in all kinds of venues, this being one, local libraries, jazz clubs, theater spaces, around the corner at the Anacostia Playhouse, around the corner this way at the Anacostia Art Center, for instance, at the Anacostia Museum, etc. So they've happened in a number of different places. I think the people who come to listen to the music come because they want to hear something different. This year we're doing something where we're celebrating a composer. His name was Billy Strahorn. Does anybody know who Billy Strahorn was? Nobody? Billy Strahorn was a jazz composer who worked with Duke Ellington. Everybody know who Duke Ellington was? Okay. I guess you know that because he's from D.C. and we celebrate him here. But at any rate, Billy Strahorn worked with Duke Ellington for nearly 30 years. Name a tune that Duke Ellington has performed that you know. Nobody know any tune that Ellington?
What's it called? If you ain't got that song.
That's one. That's another. What is the song that he opens his concerts with? It has to do with taking something up to Harlem. Anybody heard of Take the A Train? Take the A Train was the signature tune that Mr. Ellington would perform when they started a concert. Well, Mr. Strahorn actually wrote that song. And the reason he wrote the song is funny. He met Mr. Ellington in Pittsburgh and impressed him in terms of his capacity to write music. Ellington invited him to come to New York to live with him and his son and his sister and to work with him. And he instructed him that when you get to New York, catch the A train to come uptown to Harlem. That's where Ellington lived. And Billy Strahorn took that experience and wrote the song. And that's what he did with a lot of things. In fact, when he was on his deathbed, he had cancer of the esophagus. He had smoked cigarettes for a number of years. On his deathbed, he wrote Blood Count, which was a song. When he was dying, he wrote Blood Count, for instance, which is one of the most popular songs in his repertoire of music. So, in answer to the question, people learn a lot. I use it as a means of teaching black culture significantly because the time in which a lot of this music was produced by artists like Miles Davis, John Coltrane, Duke Ellington, Billy Strayhorn, Nina Simone, etc., was at a time starting in the 1940s and going until the 1970s. That 30-year period of time was the most significant period of social upheaval within our communities. We were actively involved in social change on any number of different ways, and so the music that they played, they composed, reflected that times in a lot of ways. And if you go to study jazz music, especially in regards to social change, you'll see that. In fact, if you stay in tune with EastRiverJazz.net next year, you'll see some programs that we're going to do around the music and the movement. That's it.
Hello, Mr. Brooks. Hello, Mr. Gray. My name's Kasani King. I'm an intern at We Act Radio. And my first question is, what high school did you two go to, that you attend to, and did your schools influence your music side?
I went to Eastern High School, and it didn't influence my music, my interest in music.
I went to Spingarn and also went to Cornwall Academy, but my consciousness or my dealing with music probably came more so from listening to radio when I was at college, because I had influence from guys who had come from Detroit. I had influenced some guys who came from Chicago. The Chicago brothers were more into jazz. The Detroit brothers were more into Motown. And then there was a radio station that you could hear after midnight that was coming out of Nashville. And you would hear a lot of old blues records and stuff. So me being a night owl that I was, I'd be listening to that music at night. So there was a lot of information or a lot of storytelling in the music back in those days. Motown told their stories. Chicago guys told their stories. You had the Curtis Mayfields and that sort of thing. But when you started going to listen to the music from down south, there were more blues and country. They were telling different kinds of stories. So it was like a cultural exchange, for lack of a better term, of the information I was getting of what they were singing about. They were singing about love. They were talking about hardship. They were talking about labor. They were talking about drugs. They talked about a lot of things. So I think my college era was my greatest impact of being exposed and recognizing what the whole music scene could have been and was about.
Yeah, in fact, the same was for me. So it wasn't high school as much as it was. I went to Howard and I got immersed in music, especially jazz music, as a result of being a student at Howard University.
My second question is soul, R&B, hip hop, and go-go infused together in the festival, in the Spirit Festival?
Huh?
Of course, you know I brought a flyer. All promoters bring flyers.
There you go.
Here's the lineup. I'm going from the bottom to the top. Phony People. It's a brand new act. They're considered like the next generation of the Roots. Avery Sunshine. Keyboard, singer, composer, producer. Junkyard Band. You might be familiar with them, you might not. But they're one of the first go-go bands that had a national contract with a major record label. And they're from D.C., right around the corner. Thank you very much. Estelle, girls from London, on the R&B scene, give you international flavor, and she can tell her story from where she comes from. I love her. Floetry. You got the florist and the songstress. You got two girls, both from London, singer, poet. They have a message. Anthony Hamilton. Southern boy, tells a story, give you R&B, give you a little blues, we'll give you a little gospel. My favorite, Conscious, Erykah Badu. We also brought in, because I was trying to bring somebody else to the table, I went to the West Coast and asked some brothers that I toured back in the day, Tony. So I got the West Coast, yeah. So I got Tony coming in. I got Erykah Badu, Anthony Hamilton. If you look at that from a content standpoint, I'm hitting every mark of genre of music. So I think I answered your question well.
All right. Did we have a question from the audience? The We Act Radio panel has spoken. Did we have a question from the audience? Going once? Going twice? I don't think they could possibly have told you everything you need to know in 1 hour. Okay, they told you a lot, but not everything you need to know. All right. So let me yes, young lady.
August 8th.
It's August 8th, and it's the 10th anniversary of the Summer Spirit Festival. Give them another round of applause. The 10th anniversary. Congratulations. That's a decade.
We have a marketplace that starts and opens at 2:00. Busy Bee, who lives right here in Southeast, has been operating and developing our marketplace for years. She used to have the gallery up at the Anacostia Gallery. She's been doing this and basically working with us for a long time. But her marketplace has brought in about 40-some artisans that have all kinds of stuff. And you'll see from another standpoint the kind of thing that Vernard was doing for 25 years is basically selling our product or selling conscious products or selling those things that are relative to our society and our culture. And they'll be there. And that's a very big place because you can't go and get real stuff from folk every day at the downtown stores because they don't really cater to you because they got you thinking that what you're buying is what you're about. No, your culture, there's some cultural things that you need to have in your home. I don't know if I want to go that far, but I think you get my message. Huh? Nobody's coming that direction, so I'm gonna keep the gas where I know I can ride. I don't want to turn a corner. But anyway,
Where's the festival going to be hosted?
At Merriweather Post Pavilion. The Merriweather Post Pavilion.
Columbia, Maryland is in between D.C. and Baltimore. It's about 17 miles outside of D.C. and about 13 miles outside of Baltimore.
You can follow We Act Radio. We will be constantly pushing the 10th anniversary of this, and also it would be part of the credits.
Yeah, you're right. That's how Baltimore and D.C.
It will be part of the credits once this video is produced. And again, you can follow We Act Radio on Facebook or on Twitter to get copies of this. It will also be on YouTube. Before they get out of here, I want to make sure that I got my question in, because what I wanted to make sure was shared in the spirit of telling our own stories, is trying to find out what was it, because these are self-made men. I'm a self-made man. These are my mentors, whether they know it or not. These men inspire me. And what we're trying to get you guys to understand is that certain groups of people tell their children, get a job. And certain groups of people tell their children, what do you want to do with your life? Start a business. Travel the world. Think about what you want to do. Certain group of people tell you either going to go to jail, you're going to go to school, or you're going to go to the military, or you're going to end up dead. I submit to you that those are nigger choices that they reserve for the lowest class rung of people. And until you guys start thinking for yourselves and realize that you have a plethora of options above and beyond that, you're going to end up with the same exact results. You see what these people look like out here, the broken people. You see them out there. You're going to end up just like them unless you start to do something different. Now, my question to these gentlemen, 2 questions, and it's the same questions for both of y'all. What happened that made you realize what you want to do? And then, what was your biggest obstacle preventing you from doing it that you had to overcome? Let me say it again. What was the moment that you realized what it is that you wanted to do? Then, what was the biggest obstacle that you had to overcome, personal, financial, or otherwise, that you had to overcome in order to do that? Because I submit to you guys this. I got this from the incredible, iconic filmmaker Melvin Van Peebles. He told me this. In life, you have to decide 2 questions. Have what you want or do what you want. You have to make that decision. Sometimes you can have both, but you need to decide which is most important. Because if it's have what you want, there's certain things that you must be willing to do in order to get those things. If it's do what you want, there's certain things you're not going to have in order to have ability to do those things. So I say it again, what was it that happened to you that you made you realize what it is you wanted to do? And what was your biggest obstacle you had to overcome in order to be able to do it?
I'll answer it this way. Washington, D.C. is a plantation. You know what a plantation is, right? Washington, D.C. is a plantation. The whole city is a plantation, and it's a plantation of smaller plantations. So the White House is a plantation. Capitol is a plantation. Schools are plantations, etc. And they treat us, all those places, plantations in relationship to black folks, treat us like slaves. I decided when I was in my 20s and I was married and had before I was married, it was in my 20s that I wanted to do something. I wanted to be, quote, an artist. And I figured that I didn't know how to draw, because that's what I thought an artist did, was they drew. And so it pointed me toward photography. Well, photography is one of these things. If you get a camera and you use it like crazy, you start photographing all kinds of images in your experience, because you're recording your story as you move along. And so that's what got me started, was becoming a photographer. And I worked at the post office, a big plantation, for a period of time. And I knew that wasn't going to be the life that I wanted. because I saw people who were older than me, who in some cases had law degrees, and they were sitting up there throwing mail right next to me who didn't have a degree. And they didn't seem to have a way out of that. They were going to be there forever. And that just was not going to be my life. So my decision was to get off the plantation, okay? And that is it's one that you do physically, but it's also one that you do mentally. You have to start mentally first to decide that you want to do something different with your life. Now, I chose to do the work I do, not for purposes of necessarily for financial gain. I choose to do the work I do because I want to make a difference. And in some cases, financially, I've done very well. I sold when beads were happening in the hair back in the 70s. I sold $250,000 worth of beads one year, as an example. You know, so I knew how to make money, etc. But most of the years, I haven't made money like that. But I've been able to figure out how to pay for the work I do, or have others pay for the work I do in the process of moving forward. This year, I've done 25 different types of events around celebrating Mr. Strahorn, whose 100th birthday is 29th of November. And I've got a series coming forth in the fall. I've got 6 events at the Kennedy Center, and people are so impressed with that. Don't be, but it's not all of that. But I have been able to navigate that. I've got 2 Smithsonian museums and a number of different local universities, as well as community settings in which to present the music. And it happens because I'm determined to make this thing work. I'm not wedded to I got to have this money to buy a new car. For instance, I've got a 1999 Dodge van sitting outside. It's not a 2015 Dodge van, for instance. I mean, you make those kind of sacrifices to do what you have to do. You have to, if you're really going to be committed to doing something for your community. Otherwise, you're going to be a slave on somebody's plantation. So I don't know if I answered the question.
I think you did.
Okay.
To answer your first question, when I realized after, say, 1963, 64, and when I went away to college, I realized that the kind of plight that I recognize here in D.C., and then hearing stories from guys from Mississippi or from Florida or from the Carolinas, realizing that I went to Raleigh, North Carolina, and my cousin said I couldn't sit in front of the bus. I went to a theater in North Carolina where I couldn't sit downstairs. I had to go to the balcony. I mean, he said it, Plantation, but I recognized and was like a witness to when I went out to the beach with my parents. When we had to get some gas coming back, we had to stop at a place, and there was a sign on the door saying colored interest, that way. So I had to either pay attention or stay asleep. And I think for whatever reason, the creator said, okay, it's time for you to wake up. And I realized that if I don't service information, or at least express those things or expose those things that I know can make a difference, then I'm wasting my time. And that's what compared to what did to me, because I had opportunity to have art contests, have exhibits, bring artists together, bring kids a chance to develop and learn new things and explore their own universe. And then when the government shut it down, which I recognized what was going on there, I said, well, then I'll take this road show on the road, because every place there's collective a body of black folks, there are also people who are basically trying to keep their consciousness asleep. So we would do those kinds of things, shows, presentations to show them how it can be done, have it done the right way, and have it being a part of a cultural experience for all parties involved. So you had black folks in front, you had black folks on stage, you had black folks in the back. We came to D.C. and just to flashback a little bit. We told Warner Theater and Constitution Hall, I'm not coming in there with all white union guys. Got to be some black guys in the union. We had a workshop with Dr. Dines up at Howard University. We did a training course from the stuff we did in Anacostia Park. We got guys who are still with the union today at D.C. that came out of that program. So we tried to make a change through our economics and our consciousness so that when we came back, we wouldn't have that same problem where I'd only see white boys behind the stage or white boys pushing equipment. We had guys who were working at the Kennedy Center. We did that almost everywhere we went. And I have a white partner. But what we did is make a change and try to bring the level of participation, because a lot of folks wouldn't have been go-go in certain places if we don't present ourselves to ourselves. Nobody's gonna come and take you to the promised land. You take your own self to wherever you need to go. And the exposure of giving service, watch how I use that word, the exposure of giving service, willing to do something or give something to help somebody that you can help just because of the simple things that you know how to do. That made a difference, because our relationships with people, we end up getting involved with Salt and Pepper. Kid and Play at the time, their manager, a guy named Herbie Lovebug. We ended up managing them for like 7 years. But through that management relationship, I ended up going to Australia. I went to Europe again. I traveled across the United States several times. Through Parliament Funkadelic allowing us to get involved with them back in the early 70s, I was able to travel, and some of my crew was able to travel all across country and get legitimate jobs in the business. From our contest, an art and essay contest through the school system back then. Give you a good example. I think I shared this with you before. I used to be pissed because the Washington Post would not give a good review on a concert we did. Because when you get reviews, that means agents and stuff will recognize your work and then give you more business or let you participate in more of their artists that they have on their roster. So I wanted to give reviews, but I could never get a review. So this one particular show, the USA Today gave us a positive review. When they gave us the review, I'm astounded. I said, I finally found a writer who's paying attention to our work. So I called the USA Today. I said, can you give me, I forgot, Jimmy Johns, something like that. I'd like to talk to this guy. I'd like to at least tell this guy personally, thank you for reviewing our concert. I get the guy on the phone. Thank you very much. I'm really glad for the review. I'm glad you watched our show. If it's any other show that you see us doing, if you want to come and take it, please be our guest. He said, Mr. Brooks, you don't remember me? I said, whoa, do I know you? He said, yeah, I was going to Dunbar. I was a winner of your art and essay contest. You gave me a certificate when I was in high school. My phone dropped. The blessings that come at you from seeds you put in the community will knock you out of nowhere. You hear me? This kid knew us, came through our ranks, participated in what we did, and now he's in a position to compliment and help boost us. Whoa, you know what I'm talking about. You know what I'm talking about. So you never know what happens in the things that you do or the seeds of people that you pass in your walk. So the change, it was a change in the awareness that when you do good and you give service or share what you got, I used to say stuff, I've gotten more with nothing in my pocket than I ever had with money in my pocket. You understand what I'm saying? Because people respect what you do. Your money is nothing but some floss. Ain't gonna go nowhere. Your word is the biggest precious thing that you have in life. If you keep your word and you're solid and about your word and on a positive level, you'd be surprised who will help you out or at least guide you or take you a little further than what you are. So I say my greatest value from what I've learned in my travels, regardless of where I've been and what I've done, service and my word. I keep my word, and if I say I'm gonna do something, you can close your eyes. It's gonna be done, or I'm dead.
One of the things I wanted to, as Daryl was speaking, I wanted to share. When I had a gallery downtown on 11th Street, there was a concert coming to town that Daryl and his organization was putting together for Earth, Wind, and Fire. We became a ticket outlet because of our relationship. You know?
The most revolutionary thing you possibly can do is work together. The most revolutionary thing that black people can do is work together.
Relationship. Come on, dude.
That's
Don't show them that you saw.
Give him a round of applause. Black man try too.
some of you in this space didn't know each other the first day you came in. I came and sat back here a couple of weeks ago and just observed the sister giving you a talk. And this is the second time I've been with you. But some of you didn't know each other when you first came through the door a few weeks ago. Think forward 10 years from now and the fact that some of you are going to be doing something for each other 10 years from now because of what happens here today. That can happen to you in life. And always understand that you're your brother or your sister's keeper. And you have to operate like that. Because ain't nobody outside this door around the corner at that art center around the corner. You don't see black folks running it. In Anacostia, you see black folks running this. And you've got to work with each other. Because if you don't, you will be destroyed. You will be destroyed. You've got to. You really have to work with each other. You have to put aside petty differences, etc., and understand how somebody who's coming at you wrong, the reason why they might be coming at you wrong, forgive them and figure out how to step forth together with each other. It's important. It's important. Daryl and I have known each other since the early 70s. You know, that's a long time. And we don't talk to each other every day and none of the rest of that. But we know we got each other's back today. I know he's got my back and he knows I got his back today. And it's important. So if nothing else, that's the message I want to give to you. That it's you just got to be for each other, because ain't nobody else gonna be for you but for you to be for each other. This world out here, it's a butt kicking world, but you can only stand strong if in fact you stand with each other.
Can I say something?
Absolutely.
I just want to share two quick stories, and I got to go. I got a meeting, and I got to ride all the way almost to I got to ride to Meriwether Post because I got a meeting at 2:30. Because of our community relationship back then, we had gone to different acts and managers asking them to have the opportunity to present them if they came to Washington, D.C., because it would help us serve our community and also give us funds. So one of the people we went to see out there in California one time was Ron Wisner and Freddie DeMann. At that time, they were managing the Jacksons. We gave them our program proposal. We told them who we were. We shared with them what things we would do. And we had a great reputation at the venue here and at the Capitol Center at the time because of our successful programs that we did. Out of nowhere, I get a call from a booking agent, a white booking agent, and from Los Angeles. His name was Howard Rose. He also did Elton John, so he was a major agent. His introduction to me was, Darryl Brooks. Is this Darryl Brooks? I said, yes. You have an opportunity to do the Jacksons. We need a deposit of $25,000. Once you wire the money in our account, I'll send you a contract, and you can have this date. Can you do that? I said, yeah. Thank you. And I got the information off the phone. I had no idea where I was going to get $25,000 from. I had no money. None of my crew had any money. We had pocket money, but we didn't have $25,000 that we could ship to somebody in California. We couldn't go to the building because that shows that you ain't got the finances. Because in this business world we live in, because we live in a commerce world, you got to have finances to buy radio time. You got to have finances to get things printed. You need stuff to do productions. We came and put the word out over the phone, just like we used to call it the word. I don't know what y'all call it today, but we'd put the word out. We need some money. Simple as that. We need some money. If we get this money, we can do the Jacksons. Who did we tell? We'd always done community stuff. We told the managers and the local groups that have been hanging with us all year long. Red Essence was one of them, their family, EU's family, Trouble Funk's family, because these were the bands that came through our programs. We knew they were doing go-go's every week. We knew they had street. Okay, thank you very much. But we realized, wait, whoa. We went and asked those brothers, we need this money, can you help us? We had an office right here on Delaware Avenue Southwest. I don't know if y'all know these people's names, but I'm going to say their names anyway. Annie Mack, Miss Mack, who ran Rare Essence at the time, a guy named Ted Hopkins, who just died about 2 years ago. He was doing Trouble Funk at the time, and EU. They came to our office with brown paper bags of money. We sat on 2 tables, putting money together, counting money, until we had to get to the point, don't bring no more money in here. We got enough. We don't need we don't need no more money. Okay? We went to the bank, flipped the money, bank wired it out to California, and we did the Jackson's date. James Funk, who came from Southeast, who was part of Essence, who's on WPFW every Saturday morning. James Funk laughs with me now. He says, because people don't believe him that he was a partner on a Jackson's date that sold out the Capitol Center. But if it wasn't for my community, if it wasn't, I'm going to say this slow, if it wasn't for my community, I would have been ass out. Because I wouldn't have had the money to be able to take the opportunity when it knocked on my door. And when the white folks came at me, they came at me to lose because said, only street money, some drug money. No guy, this nonprofit group ain't got that kind of money. But by us coming up with the money, and the only way you can put money through the bank is that you can justify it. So we were able to justify because our relationship with the bank to be able to send that money out. The show sold out, did tremendous business. And I'm sharing that with you is that I couldn't do that if I didn't have trust and a relationship with my community and my community having trust and relationship with us. And I can give you incident after incident of how that has helped us, from going to Atlanta and somebody threatening us when we got there, some outside dudes threatening us, but because of our relationship, one of my college buddies worked for the mayor. So he gave me the mayor's security when I played my show at the Fox. The building manager says, I hadn't heard about you guys, but you must know a lot of people. We came in there strong. You understand what I'm saying? From cats I met in college. As Vernard said, the cats, somebody in this room might be that person, that be the connection that might get a good job or have a good business that can relate to something that you might need or you can help in your future. Those are the kinds of things that happen with relationships and service.
All right, give them a standing ovation. On your feet, give them a standing ovation. All right. I know on the count of 3, everybody say do something. 1, 2, 3. Do something. All right. I want to do for y'all is I want to get two photos. Keep my hands. You make me nervous. Photo with both of y'all together alone, and then we're going to take a photo with you, and you're free to go. Well, of course, you got to sign my wall, though. Go straight back, Bob. Yes, sir.